Several detained in Hong Kong for disturbance. Singapore's high cost of living sends exports to Malaysia. US-UK Navy responded to distress call from Strait of Hormuz, and Moscow alleges foil against Ukrainian attack. Stay with me for this and more stories. The United States military has scrambled F-16 fighter jets in a supersonic chase of a wayward and unresponsive plane that flew over Washington, D.C. before crashing into the mountains of Virginia. Virginia State Police said no survivors were found at the crash site on Sunday. The Federal Aviation Administration said the Cessna Citation took off from Elizabethtown, Tennessee earlier in the day and was headed for New York's Long Island. Mysteriously, the plane turned around over Long Island and flew a straight path down over the U.S. Capitol before it crashed over mountainous terrain near Montebello, Virginia at about 3:30 p.m. local time, 1930 Greenwich Meridian time. 4 people were on board the Cessna, of source familiar with the matter said according to a report. A Cessna Citation can carry as many as 12 passengers. It was not immediately clear why the plane was unresponsive or why it crashed. According to the flight tracking website FlightAware, the Cessna was registered to Encore Motors of Melbourne, Florida. John Rupmel, who runs the company, said his daughter, 2-year-old granddaughter, her nanny and the pilots were on board the plane. They were returning to their home in East Hampton, Long Island after visiting his house in North Carolina, he said, adding that he did not have much information from authorities but hoped his family had not suffered and suggested the plane could have lost pressurization. It descended at 20,000 feet, 6,000 meters a minute, and nobody could survive a crash from that speed, he said. Residents of the city and its suburb reported hearing the thundering noise which rattled windows and shook walls for miles and caused social media to light up with people asking what happened. Several residents said they heard the noise as far away as Northern Virginia and Maryland. Meanwhile, the U.S. Capitol complex in Washington, D.C., the 1999 crash of a Learjet that lost cabin pressure and flew aimlessly across the country with professional golfer Payne Stewart on board. The jet crashed in a South Dakota pasture and 6 people died. Talking politics, police in Hong Kong have detained dozens of people on charges of breaching public peace during a crackdown on commemorations of the anniversary of the bloodshed in Beijing's Tiananmen Square. Restrictions on Hong Kong have subdued what were once the largest vigils marking the anniversary of the bloody crackdown by Chinese forces on pro-democracy demonstrators, leaving cities rather like Taipei, London, New York and Berlin to keep the memory of June 4th, 1989 alive. Near Victoria Park on Sunday night, the previous site of the early vigils, hundreds of police conducted stop and search operations and deployed armored vehicles and police vans. Police took away over a dozen people at the scene, according to the report, including activist Alexandra Wong, 67, a man who held a copy of the 35th of May, a play on the Tiananmen crackdown, and an elderly man standing alone on a street corner with a candle. The regime wants you to forget, but you can't forget it. Wants to whitewash all history, said Chris Toll, 51, who visited the park in a black t-shirt and was searched by the police. We need to use our bodies and word of mouth to tell others what happened. Police in a statement said 11 men and 12 women aged between 20 and 74 were detained on suspicion of breaching the public peace at the scene. An additional 4 people had been arrested on Saturday for seditious acts and disorderly conduct, and 4 more on suspicion of breaching public peace. On business and economy, according to global real estate count for 26% in 2022. The city-state's government in January raised the goods and no official data on the number of foreign workers leaving Singapore. Multinational firms are increasingly looking to move staff out of the city due to its location, English-speaking population, low cost of living, and strong presence of back-end office functions. Nice Chambers, the managing director of Michael Page Malaysia, said according to reports, while expats have been leaving Singapore due to the high rental and living costs, this has been Ofstis One Pass, a visa that allows eligible talent to work for multiple companies at once, according to recruitment firm 1010 Partners. Operating out of London, Singapore, Hong Kong, and opening soon in Dubai, 1010 Partners clients range from mid to senior level employees INSEAD Global Competitiveness Index 2022 and retains its ports as the most livable location for expatriates from East Asia in the ECA International 2023 Location Rating Survey. The Singaporean government market caused by COVID-19 have started to ease. The United States Navy has said its sailors and the United Kingdom's Royal Navy came to the aid of a ship in the crucial Strait of Hormuz after Iran's Revolutionary Guard allegedly harassed it. The said in a statement it shared black and white images which showed 3 small ships close to the commercial vessel taken by a U.S. Navy Boeing P-8 Poseidon that was flying overhead. The U.S. Navy's guided missile destroyer USS McFaul and the Royal Navy's frigate HMS Lancaster responded to the incident, with the Lancaster launching a helicopter. The merchant ship continued transiting the Strait of Hormuz without further incident. About 20% of the world's oil passes through the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow mouth of the Persian Gulf. While the Navy did not identify the vessel involved, ship tracking data from marinatraffic.com analyzed by reports showed the Marshall Islands flagged bulk carrier Venture erratically changed course as it traveled through the strait at the time of the incident. Its location also matched information about the incident given by the United Kingdom Maritime Trade Operations, a UK military operation overseeing traffic in the region. The vessel also resembled the images released by the Navy. The ship's registered manager, Trust Bulkers of Athens, Greece, did not. Iran's mission to the United Nations did not immediately respond to a request for comments as well. This latest incident comes after a series of maritime incidents involving Iran, following the U.S. unilaterally withdrawing from Tehran's nuclear deal with world powers in 2018. Now on Russia-Ukraine war, Russia has said its forces foiled a major Ukrainian offensive in the Ukrainian region of Donetsk, killing 250 Ukrainian troops and destroying tanks and armored vehicles. On the morning of June 4th, the enemy launched a large-scale offensive in 5 sectors of the front in the South Donetsk region, the Russian Defense Ministry said on its Telegram page early on Monday. There was no update from Ukraine on the alleged offensive. In its evening updates on June 4th, the General Staff of Ukraine's armed forces said Moscow was focusing its military efforts on the full occupation of Luhansk and Donetsk regions. Donetsk is one of 4 Ukrainian territories that Russia annexed last September, along with Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson. During the day, the occupiers made 23 attacks, but all of them were repulsed by units of the defense forces, it said. It was not possible to immediately verify the Russian or Ukrainian claims. The Russian Defense Ministry said Ukraine had launched the attack using 6 mechanized and 2 tank battalions. The enemy's goal was to break through our defenses in the most vulnerable, in its opinion, sector of the front. The Defense Ministry said the enemy did not achieve its attacks as it had no success. Ukraine has been preparing for a counter-offensive to take back territory occupied by Russia since it began its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, as well as the Crimean Peninsula it seized in 2014. But it has given mixed signals about what the counter-offensive will involve: preliminary, limited attacks to weaken Russian forces and military facilities, or a large-scale simultaneous assault across the entire 1,100 kilometers, 685-mile front line. More stories. New Zealand pilot kidnapping draws world's attention. A New Zealand pilot, Philip Martins, who was kidnapped by West Papua National Liberation Army TPNBP fighters in February, his fate remains uncertain as the conflict in Indonesia's Papua region intensifies. The TPNBP has demanded Papua's independence as a condition for his release, while Indonesia has deployed police and soldiers to rescue him. The incident has drawn renewed attention to the long-standing struggle of the indigenous Papuans for self-determination and human rights. Philip Martins, 37, was flying a small passenger plane for Susi Air, an Indonesian airline that operates in remote areas of the country. On February 7th, he landed his plane in Buga, a mountainous province in Papua that is a stronghold for the TPNBP. He was carrying 5 passengers who were all indigenous Papuans. Shortly after landing, he was ambushed by a group of armed rebels who took him hostage and released the passengers. The rebels later identified themselves as the members of the TPNBP, the military wing of the Free Papua Movement, OPM, a separatist organization that has been fighting for Papua's independence from Indonesia since the 1960s. The TPNBP claimed that they kidnapped Martins because New Zealand cooperates militarily with Indonesia, and they wanted to use him as a political prisoner and a bargaining chip. They said they will only release him if Papua was granted independence. They also accused Indonesia of exploiting Papua's natural resources and violating human rights of the indigenous people. The TPNBP has released several photos and videos of Martin since his capture, showing him surrounded by rebels with guns and bows and arrows. In some of the videos, Martins appears to read a prepared statement echoing the rebels' demands. In one video released in May, he said that the rebels threatened to shoot him if their demands were not met within 2 months. The kidnapping of Martins has brought international attention to the conflicts in Papua, which has been ongoing since 1969. Papua is the easternmost territory of Indonesia and comprises the western half of New Guinea Island. It is rich in natural resources such as gold, copper, natural gas, timber, and palm oil. It has a population of more than 5.4 million people, but the indigenous Papuans, who are Melanesian, are now thought to be outnumbered by settlers from other parts of Indonesia. In Africa, Guinea-Bissau voters await outcome. Ballots are being counted in Guinea-Bissau following Sunday's legislative elections. About 600 soldiers were deployed to ensure security during the electoral process. Voters are seeking to end instability after a coup attempt in February 2022 led to the dissolution of the National Assembly. Voting Bureau member Barros Pesce said there were no problems and voting took place peacefully. No arguments or fights were reported. The atmosphere was good. People came out to vote in droves. Everyone had their say on who will represent them for the next 4 years. In any case, everyone voted as they saw it fit. Some 200 international observers were on hand to monitor the elections. President Mbalo Madem, G15 Party, and the African Party for Independence of Guinea and Cape Verde, PAIGC, are the two largest parties. Results are expected on Tuesday. And still on the news, in Senegal, calm returns after deadly protests. Tranquil has returned to the streets of Senegal's capital, Dakar, following 72 hours of violence. On Thursday, clashes erupted in the wake of the sentencing of opposition leader Ousmane Sonko to 2 years in prison. On Saturday, authorities said 500 people had been detained since Thursday. The security forces were faced with violent demonstrators who were not seeking to express opinions, but rather were engaged in subversive activities. The people apprehended during these events are mainly armed and dangerous individuals. Most of those arrested were in possession of Molotov cocktails, knives, and large caliber firearms, said Ibrahima Diop, Senegal's Director of Public Security. Supporters of Sonko and President Macky Sall have traded blame for the violence and deaths. The violence resulted in at least 16 deaths and more than 350 wounded. Sonko was not present at his trial and is yet to be taken into custody for his jail term, which is predicted to stoke further tensions. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, I'll bring you more stories from Nigeria. Stay with us. Here are more stories from Nigeria. We begin with NLC absent as federal government TUC agree on salary increase. Yesterday, the Nigeria Labour Congress NLC was not present at the continued negotiations between the federal government and representatives of the organized Labour Center at the State House in Abuja. The first meeting held last Wednesday to deliberate the contentious issue of removal of fuel subsidy by the federal government was attended by representatives of both NLC and Trade Union Congress TUC. But at the reconvened meeting yesterday, representatives of NLC did not turn up, just as TUC presented its demands to government, with minimum wage review topping the list. Joe Ajero, president of NLC, according to a report yesterday, accused the federal government of foul play, insincerity, and insensitivity on the subsidy matter. NLC insisted that the federal government lied in its declaration that there was no appropriation for subsidy beyond May 2023. The NLC also stated that all its branches and affiliates across the country were united in the fight to reverse the unilateral surge in pump price of petrol. However, following the directive by the National Union of Electricity Employees NUEE to its members to withdraw their services nationwide from Wednesday and join the planned strike plan by NLC, some industry and analysts caution workers against downing tools, saying it threatens national security risk. They stressed that the law clearly stated that it was an offense for anyone or group to stop or obstruct the transmission of electricity through any electricity or main transmission line. Likewise, Judiciary Staff Union of Nigeria, JUSUN, in a letter dated June 3, 2023, began mobilizing all its chapters and members for the nationwide action and withdrawal of service from Wednesday over the increase in the pump price of PMS by the federal government, according to the letter signed by JUSUN General Secretary MJ Akwashiki. Weighing on the subsidy matter, People's Democratic Party PDP yesterday called on the federal government to engage the organized labor to find solution to the raging clash. Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu, Lagos State Governor and ex-leader of the Senate, Mohammed Ali Ndume, yesterday appealed to the national leadership of NLC not to embark on its proposed nationwide strike, saying Tinubu means well for the country. But yesterday, founder of Stanbic IPTC Bank PLC and ANAP Foundation, Atedo Peterside, called on Tinubu and others in the present government who had in 2012 opposed the removal of fuel subsidy by the administration of the then President Goodluck Jonathan to tender an unreserved apology to the former president as well as Nigerians. NNPC had last week adjusted the pump price of petrol by nearly 200% from 195 naira per litre to between 488 naira and 557 naira nationwide. The development followed the announcement by Tinubu in his inaugural speech on Monday that fuel subsidy was gone. Tinubu promised to rechannel the expected savings to education, health and other sectors, but the development did not go down well with NLC, which has announced plans to commence a nationwide strike from Wednesday. After the meeting held at the conference room of the Chief of Staff's office, according to TUC, the leaders and federal government representatives disclosed that negotiations will continue from tomorrow, when the federal government will be taking labor's demands to President Bola Tinubu. The meeting lasted about 2.5 hours, and the government was expected to come with answers to labor's demands. Apart from the demand for a review of minimum wage, TUC demanded a tax break for Nigerian workers. He said it will leave the remaining items on the list undisclosed until the government representatives will have relayed the list to the president and come back with positions. Mr. Dele Aleke, spokesman of the government side, expressed satisfaction with the proceedings. Aleke hinted that the demands by TUC were not impracticable, but he noted that the president must be given time to consider them. According to him, government will look into the issue of minimum wage, since the removal of subsidy has the immediate consequence of reducing the purchasing power of the people. He added that government will be putting a tripartite committee together to study all dynamics relating to the subsidy. And finally, on the news, NDLEA recovers illicit drugs from 4 states. Operatives of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, has seized no less than 76.9 kg of Canadian loud, a synthetic strain of cannabis, from 4 used vehicles in a container marked MSDU 66866346 from Canada at the Port Harcourt complex on a River State. The illicit drugs were seized between June 1st and June 2nd during a joint inspection of the shipment with men of the Nigerian Customs Service. Femi Babafemi, the spokesperson for the NDLEA, revealed this in a statement according to reports on Sunday. This decision followed the request for 100% examination of the shipment as a result of earlier intelligence received by the agency on the container, Babafemi said. Also noting that operatives stormed the Iwe forest in the Iwe community, the O1 West local government area of Edo State, where they located a large warehouse of skunk used to store 231 jumbo bags of the psychotropic substance weighing 3,003 kg, which was set ablaze. Adding that the operation involved hundreds of well-armed NDLEA operatives. In the early hours of Tuesday, May 30th, followed intelligence that a wanted drug kingpin had stored tons of the illicit substance in the forest ready for distribution to other parts of the country. In Kano State, 2 suspects, Marafu Rabiu and Abubakar Mustafa, were arrested on May 30th alongside Zaria Kano Road with 260 blocks of cannabis weighing 139.4 kg, while Awal Ibrahim was nabbed with 38 kg of the same substance the following day along Kaduna Abuja Road. Same day, 35-year-old female suspect Bilkisu Isia was arrested at Birnin Yero, Kaduna in possession of 5.6 kg of cannabis. In Borno State, 2 suspects, Abubakar Usman, aka Alhaji Mekeru, and Adamu Yusuf, were arrested in Bargu village, the Shani local government area, on June 3rd, and 165 blocks of skunk weighing 140.7 kg. The arrest was effected with military support deep inside a fleet insurgents environment. Also, a female suspect, Hawa Ibrahim, 25, was nabbed in the same village with 6.4 kg of the psychoactive substance, while another suspect, Alhaji Abubakar, 27, was arrested and Jimilu toll checkpoints with 4,200 ampoules of pentazocine injection and different quantities of D5 and XO5 tablets. A 30-year-old suspect, Iroko Wasi, was arrested at a drug joint at Sabo Abba Awolowo along Oyo Ogbomosho Express on May 30th, and 31.2 kg of cannabis was recovered from him, while 2 suspects, Deji Adelabu, 35, and Mashiu Salau, 37, were nabbed the following day in the Sabo area along Oyo Ogbomosho Road and Awuro Dada area in the Orire local government area of Oyo State, with a total of 8 kg cannabis recovered from them, Baba Femi added. A recap of major stories says U.S. fighter jets chase small plane in Washington, D.C. Several detained in Hong Kong for disturbance. Singapore's high cost of living sends exports to Malaysia. U.S.-UK Navy responded to distress call from Strait of Hormuz, and Moscow alleges war against Ukrainian attack. That's all on the news. Thanks for watching. I am Lois Duraki. Enjoy the rest of your day and have a beautiful week ahead.